Gentlemen, Ms. Jan Wong. Nice to see you. Yesterday on our show, Ben Harper on the show last night said life was about a series of good dogs. For you, life is a series of good glasses.
I know, it's so funny to look at all the different glasses I've had. It's a little embarrassing when you get to the Ray-Bans.
Everybody was doing it. It's not your fault. Beijing Confidential is... it is a brave book in the sense that you put on paper and tell a story where you know you don't look good in it.
Yes, that's right.
And the story is, tell people about it.
I'm a journalist, so I'm often writing about people who don't look good, and I always get attacked for that, but I'm pretty hard on myself, too. Mm-hmm. I wanted to find this person that I had turned in, reported to my teacher over 30 years ago. She had, as you said, she had asked me for help in escaping China, and I thought that I would help her by telling the authorities.
I mean, you were very much you were a Maoist at the time. You were very into that.
And I also was living in a China where I was only being shown a certain side of China. I didn't know about labor camps. I was shown the side where, oh yes, if you do something we don't like, we criticize you in a friendly way and we help you. So I was reading English books and they didn't like that. They thought I should study Chinese. I went there to study Chinese. So I was criticized. I thought that's what would happen to her. I didn't know I was going to ruin her life.
When did you find out you ruined her life? Because this is also one of those things where when you did at the time, as I've read from you, you didn't think it was that big a deal because, again, you didn't know.
Right.
And then you come home years later.
I wrote about it in my diary. I kept a diary then because I was the only Canadian studying in China during the Cultural Revolution. And I forgot about it because I didn't think there would be any repercussions. It would be the same as, I don't know, just point out to someone, would you not litter in the TTC? And you wouldn't, really give it another thought. You wouldn't think they would be sent off to a labor camp for throwing the chocolate bar wrapper. Okay. So 20 years later, when I'm finishing my posting as a foreign correspondent, I was planning to write my first book, Red China Blues. So I went back through my diary and I was reading, trying to remind myself of what happened. And I came to this very brief part in my diary that said, and then this young woman asked us for a walk, to go for a walk around the lake, and then she asked us how many refrigerators we have in the West, and how much does a worker earn, and can you help me go to the U.S.? And then I remembered, and I went, I can't believe this, because I knew by that time I had covered Tiananmen Square, I had written about human rights, I had been to labor camps, I had been to Chinese jails as a journalist, and of course I knew what would have happened. Mm-hmm. So I went to find my roommate, Scarlett, from my old days. And I said to Scarlett, what happened to her? And Scarlett said she was called before the entire history department. She was a history student. And she was denounced and then she was expelled. And I said to Scarlett, and then what? And Scarlett said, I don't know. Nobody knows what happened. So I was leaving China. I told myself I don't have time to find her. I went back 4 more times. I don't have time to find her.
So you're dodging it, obviously, because you don't want to deal with it.
Well, I didn't have time to find her, but I don't want to find her. I mean, I was afraid of what I might find. What if I couldn't find her? What if she wasn't around anymore? Or what if she was going to kill me? I didn't have the courage to look for her. But then, last year I thought, it's now or never. I was going back to do this book, Beijing Confidential, which was really about Beijing and how it's changed. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, I'm in Beijing. I'm going to wander around the city and write about it, but what else can I do? That's not enough. I want to do something else. I finally have time. I have a month. Let me see if I can find her.
Now you're in an interesting position. As a journalist, you have the skill set to do this. You can find somebody, so you don't have the excuse if I can't pull this off.
Well, I had a lot of good excuses. I mean, there's no phone books in China. People have cell phones. They change them every 6 months. With the new economy, 70% of people own their houses, but they're selling and buying all the time. My roommate moved 5 times. I couldn't find her. It took me 2 weeks to find her. I had a lot of excuses, but I'm a journalist, and I just never give up until there's no time left.
So what happened?
So I tracked down former schoolmates. I went back to Beijing University to ask my teacher. I found my teacher. She's retired now. I said, do you remember? Do you remember this? She doesn't even remember. You know why? Because it was nothing. Everybody was turning everybody in during the Cultural Revolution. That's why for me it was not a big deal either. I thought it was just normal to do this. Yeah. When I told her, she didn't react. She didn't I'm going to call the police. She said nothing. She just went on with my lesson. So I didn't know what was going to happen. So I tracked down every single person that I could find from that era. And I found one teacher who told me she's around. She's around. And I said, okay. And he said, well, she just changed her cell phone number. And I went, oh. And I said, okay, can you help me try to find her? And I didn't want to tell him why. He was one of the bad guys from the old days, meaning he was good guy then, right? So, but if he knew what I wanted to do, he probably wouldn't have helped me. So I just said, there's this student, I had a relationship with her, it was just 10 minutes, but I'd like to find her, I really think about her, can you help me? And he did, he put her in touch, and she called me.
So the phone rings.
Right, and then you have to go and buy the book. No. The phone rings, and I'm on a street corner, and I'm really scared because I don't know if she hates me and just wants to take this opportunity to say, I hate your guts. Don't ever contact me again.
Okay, before you tell me, what did you want her to say?
I wanted to say, I'm sorry. I didn't want her to say anything. I wanted to say, I'm really sorry. I'm so sorry for what I did. And then if she would still talk to me, I wanted her to tell me what had happened to her, because I had been worrying about her since the last 12, 15 years, and I wanted to know what had happened. I wanted to know if I could make amends in any way. So, of course, you can't do that on a phone call. It was rush hour, and the traffic was zooming around. I fell to my knees because I was so excited. And my kids were with me. I brought them. I dragged them to China. They didn't want to go.
Did they know? Did you tell them what was going on?
Yes, and they were going, oh boy, there Mom goes again. They're used to my crazy journalism, and they didn't know how hard it was. My husband was also with me, and he just said, you're never going to find her. You just don't have enough. I didn't even have her name. I didn't have her name. So,
oh my God,
I know.
How do you find that?
Well, you just keep unraveling the string and getting closer and closer and closer. I didn't really think I was going to find her. So at that moment, I said, well, will you see? She said, I remember you. And I thought, yeah, I bet. But she didn't have any tone in her voice of sarcasm or any hostility. She just said, I always remembered you, and I would love to see you. So I said, okay, how about tomorrow? And she said, okay, where? She said, how about meeting me at Beijing University, the scene of my crime? So I went, okay. And I remember the next day I was really nervous, and my 14-year-old son, Sam, said to me, you better be careful, Mom. She might have hired a gang of thugs to beat you up because you ruined her life. And I thought,
thanks.
So I was worried, but it was okay.
And your publisher's lucky that we're almost out of time, because they will have to buy the book to figure this out. There's more to this, and you mentioned the university. Another really interesting part of the story is the Cultural Revolution. When I was a kid, you hear a lot about it. It's gone. It's almost like it's been erased from people's memory over there.
That's right. So nobody in China goes back to find their victims. None of the victimizers go back. So when I said I was going back, people are going, why? And yes, the Cultural Revolution is a blank for most people. They don't talk about it because the government is directly implicated in it. So you can't talk about it. It implicates the Communist Party. And I think there's the idea, they don't have psychology, psychiatry, or therapy. So the idea that you could talk this through, that it is a wound that needs to be healed, they don't have that understanding, so they just bury it. So it was really unusual for me to go back, and it was really unusual for her to talk about it. It has a happy ending, though. I should tell people.
Oh, good. There you go.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to read the book. The free market, there's as many fast food restaurants, growing there as growing everywhere. Beijing is changing. Shanghai is changing. That whole country is changing. And I wonder if those people in power who are trying to keep it a certain way are eventually going to lose out because the momentum of change is just too strong.
I think so. I think in the long run, you can't sustain a totalitarian country because with economic development, you give people choices and you give people ways to communicate. So you actually have a lot of freedom of press in China. So I don't think the Communist Party can last in the long run.
Please come back again. There's more to talk about.
Thanks a lot.
Beijing Confidential, everybody. Wong.
Thank you.
So Jan had a major breakthrough, right? Some of us need a little extra help when it comes to, doing other stuff. We'll get the most famous motivational coach in the world when we come back.
I need him.